Hi, I'm Renee Williams.
And I'm Billy Thomas.
And welcome to another edition of From the Woods Today.
Today we have got some really neat topics. Both of them to me are kind of like, what? For one, it's like, it's August. It's hot. We're going to be talking about firewood. Why? But anyway, they'll let us know about that. And also we have one, it's like monarch tagging. How do you tag a butterfly? That totally confuses me, but they're going to let us know.
Yeah, we're fortunate to have two experts talking about both those subjects, Renee. We're going to have Mr. Doug McLaren with us. And yeah, while it is hot in August, in Kentucky, it's going to be cold before we know it. And
Right.
this complaining about the heat will quickly turn into complaining about how cold it is, right? Because that's what we do, right? So, but Doug's going to help us figure out how we might be able to use some wood to help keep us warm during these really, really cold winters that we get here in Kentucky. So really excited to have Doug talking about, kind of that process of getting your firewood ready and storing. It's really important, right? If you can make some mistakes here and it can cost you dearly. We also have Miss Anna Wiker with us. She's our Master Naturalist Coordinator here in our department, and always great to have Anna. She's a naturalist by training and by experience for sure. But she's going to be talking about monarchs, right? There's been a lot of attention in the last few years on monarchs and some of the challenges they're facing, and we'll hear about them. And we'll also, like you said, learn about kind of how to kind of monitor and tag them and do all that crazy stuff.
Mind blowing to me.
You're
on a butterfly, but
Hey, so Anna will show us the way, but no, really excited. I'm glad to have you all with us, right? This show is for you all, our viewers and listeners. So thank you for being with us. If you have any questions for our presenters today, please use the chat function if you're on Zoom, and if you're a YouTuber or on podcast listener, thank you both. Really appreciate that. But you can interact with us via email at forestry.extension@uky.edu, and we could respond to you that way. But Renee, glad to be with you today. It's starting to get a little bit cooler here in Kentucky, first
finally
a cooling trend. So yeah, it's good. I'm glad to be here and glad to have you all with us.
Exactly. But you know what? Now we're going to heat some things up. So welcome to the show again. And the thing about it is like, really, do we need to talk about firewood and
We always need to be talking about firewood.
Oh, really? Okay. Because
always.
The thing about it is like you don't really just need to cut trees down and then stick them in your fireplace. That's not.
There's a little bit more to it, and that will be the explanation as to why we're talking about firewood in the heat of the summer.
Well, Doug, not only are you an amazing forester and done so much for forestry here in Kentucky, this is something that you live and breathe all the time, right? Firewood. So I know you are coming from not only educational background, but you're also coming from a strong experience background with this presentation. So really appreciate you sharing all your expertise with the audience.
Yeah, and he is a retired forester from our department. So
I don't really think he's retired, right? He still keeps working all the time. He was with me on Saturday up at the Woodland Owners Short Course out there doing his thing. So yeah, Doug, appreciate all you do for forestry and our landowners here in Kentucky.
I saw him Saturday, I saw him Tuesday, and I'm seeing him today. So I'm like, you're not retired, Doug. So
always here, always glad to have you, Doug. Appreciate all you've got to share with our audience.
Enjoy being here.
It's your presentation. Looking forward to it.
Let's see if we can get it started here. All right, folks. What we're going to do is we're going to talk about firewood for the next few minutes. This is basically Firewood 101. It's the basic fundamentals. I know that there's a lot of people out there that are well and versed in firewood, and I just wanted to bring all the different parts of that together so that we all have an idea what's going on. And for those people that may have an interest, we'll get you started there too. This is a clip that I took off of the weather last week. It was August 12th, a little more than a week ago, 11 o'clock in the morning, and it was already 85 degrees, and it felt like 91 with a dew point of 71. I think I heard on the TV last night that we have not set a record, but we're very close to setting a record of the number of days 90 degrees or more. And I think we just had like 11 of them as of yesterday. I don't think we're going to make it today, which is fine with me. But this is simply saying it's the heat of the summer. What in the ding dong are we talking about firewood? Especially, here's a picture of a small firebox. And why do we need to talk about that? Well, let's start off with some fun facts first, and we'll kind of warm things up to get to that particular point of using firewood. First of all, 2.2 million households use firewood as their primary source of heat. That means every day there's a load of wood being put into that firebox, whatever they might do. That's 4% of the residential energy here in the United States is actually utilized by firewood. Kentucky, what's so nice about Kentucky is the amount of diversified woods that we have available to us. Just a tremendous number of species. We in forestry talk about close to 120 different tree species that are talked about in the forest community. And so from that, there's a number of them that are high in energy woods available to us. I know that everybody wants to talk about the price of wood. I'll make mention of it at the very end, but it's all based upon location. Wherever you are, that is where the price is going to be calculated. The closer you are to the source, meaning if you live in a rural area and there's a lot of firewood around you, it's going to be a heck of a lot expensive, lot less expensive than if you're actually living in a town or a city such as Lexington. There aren't too many sources for wood there, so it has to be moved in. So the price we'll talk about a little bit later. I want you to know that this talk is being based upon my experiences, and I do this year in and year out. The thing that you need to know is that I have a small two-wheel drive pickup. I don't have a four-wheel, I use two-wheel. So if I can't get there with two-wheel, I'm not going to be able to get to it. I use only a 16-inch bar chainsaw, and I'll explain why I only use 16-inch. I use a 6-pound splitting maul, and occasionally I'll use a gas splitter. But most of the stuff that I do, or most of the wood that I create, is done with a hand splitter, a hand maul. And basically, I'm doing it for exercise. Like Renee said, I've retired and I do want to keep my body moving. So believe it or not, using a 6-pound splitting maul does that for me. The firewood that I split and the wood stove that I use is supplemental heat and not my primary heat. I would freeze to death if it was my primary source. The stove is a lot smaller than the size of the house. So it does not heat the entire house, but it certainly does have an effect on the furnace itself. It is a free standing wood stove that I have in my living room. And I have to have 12-inch splits because the stove is smaller than what a lot of people use if they are trying to heat their entire house. I use nothing mechanical to move the wood from the stump to the truck, which means I have to get right to the stump to gather this wood up. I don't go back into the so-called woods dragging this stuff out. Things to consider. Here we are, August, October, November. Today's talk is simply going to be focusing on this period of time right now, and that's August. What's going on in August, and what should we be thinking about in August? Well, first of all is safety. You should take a look at your stove and make sure that the liners in there are not missing. They use fire bricks in there. If they're cracked, it's okay, but if they're missing, that is not good. You need to have those replaced. And also check for airflow. I don't know if you recognize, but there's usually an airflow control on your wood stove. And on mine, you push it in or out to get more air to be able to flow in. Recognize the fact that that air is coming from the outside of the stove to the inside. And if you continuously have ashes in there and don't clean them out thoroughly, that passageway may get clogged up. What I do at the end of every season, I will clean it out, clean the ashes out the best I can, and then I will take a vacuum cleaner and clean out that airflow so that there's always going to be air going through there during the season. Any buildup on the stovepipe, creosote. Creosote is usually created from conifers. I don't use conifers, but periodically, meaning every so often, you ought to be able to look up through that stove and check. I ran mine for about 3 or 4 years and had somebody check it when they were on the roof and they looked down and there wasn't a spot in there. But creosote can create problems. It can cause fires, but we'll talk about how to keep that from happening. Correct stove pipe clearances. If you have your stove in already, you're in a situation where you need to have had this all done. But the stove needs to have a certain clearance from the wall and from the roof, and also it needs to have some protection underneath, some kind of a pad that is fire protective, so that your floor doesn't catch fire. But again, if you have your stove in, all of that's probably been taken care of. Safety hazards around a firebox for children. Um, you can simply put up a screen around there to keep kids from either touching it or falling onto it. My kids are all old enough now that they understand, and I don't have any real protection around the box itself. This particular one, this particular picture, I thought was very interesting. You need to think about the safety around your stacked firewood. The person that stacked this firewood had a lot of extra time on their hands to have been able to create this stack of wood. But you can understand to have somebody start standing or moving around and climbing on this, it could be a total disaster. Your stacked firewood, you need to be careful that nobody goes near it so it could fall actually onto them. And don't move firewood more than 50 miles. This is dealing with invasive species. And the last one is don't burn commercially treated timber. There are chemicals in there, and you don't want that to get into the air of your house closed up. Now, this is what should be going on right now, and that is you need to begin to collect firewood for next year, not for this coming November or October, but you need to be collecting for next year, which would be actually a year from now. And most woods need to be dried from anywhere from 6 months to a year. It depends on the species and depends on the drying conditions you have. Where is it coming from is basically the big thing. Standing timber, if you're dealing with a tree that's standing now, it's full of water, and it for sure has to have that almost year of drying conditions. So it needs to be cut and at least be in the round form at within the next month or so. And recently down trees and or branches. I'll give you an example of what this is. This is a tree that's in my front yard, still there. It does look like it's in bad condition, but I'm going to keep it up as long as I can. But last winter, we had a small ice storm and it broke this branch off. It was a leaning branch and it broke off. And so I went out there this spring and cut it. I was standing out there, and that's where it was, close to the ground. And then later on, meaning it was midsummer, I think. I was standing on the front porch, I think during a rain and windstorm, and that branch in the top fell out. And what's interesting is most people look at it and say, "Oh, gee, all that wood, it's going to take a truckload or 2 truckloads to get all that out of here. It's going to take a truck or 2 truckloads to get all the branches out of here." The way I look at it and the way I measure wood on the ground is how long is that wood going to last when I start burning it? And so I'll look at a branch or a log and I'll say, oh, there's a week's worth of wood, or there's 2 weeks worth. And it's always nice to see a month's worth of wood lying around. But I don't categorize it as how much volume it is, but how long it's going to last me in the firebox. The bigger question: what is the best wood for a wood stove? And here's a list of them. They are in logical sequence, going from the warmest woods down to the least warmest wood. You will see that it's related to in British thermal units. It's simply a measure of how good that wood is. The denser the wood is, the more heat it is going to provide. And you see Osage orange being at the top. A lot of people don't like it because of thorns. I've had flat tires because of Osage orange. But you can see beech ash, white oak, red oak, sugar maple. And then I have this one silver maple, and I have it highlighted. And there's a reason for that. Even though it is a maple, it doesn't have the BTUs as what a sugar maple does. So if anybody wants to give you silver maple, hesitate, because it doesn't have that much heat quality to it. It only has 20, where sugar maple, its close cousin, has 27. And these are all common woods that are found here in the state of Kentucky. You can find them very, very easily over most of the entire state. Now, there are two species that are not listed here: yellow poplar and a conifer, well, pine or conifers. Yellow pine is not a dense wood. It burns very quickly. In fact, if you compare yellow poplar with uh, your Osage orange, you're going to have twice as much yellow poplar to keep you as warm as what that Osage orange is. So beware that yellow poplar is not the best wood to maintain a fire. It's always good to start a fire with, but not to maintain it. And conifers, pines, you can see it's going to take 3 and 4 times as much pine to keep you as warm as the Osage orange. And so it is the one that's responsible for creating resinous buildup, creosote on your pipes. So I don't like to use pine for that reason. How is firewood measured? It's measured by the cord. It's a stack of wood piled 4 feet high, 8 feet wide, and 4 feet deep. That is a cord. That's how we measure it. It has 128 cubic feet within it. So it doesn't have to be 4 by 4 by 8. It can be any dimension, but a cord of wood needs to accumulate 128 cubic feet. Now, that doesn't mean that every 128 cubic feet of that inside is going to be filled with wood, but that is the area in which you create it. Another thing you need to do if you're buying wood and somebody says, they're selling you by the cord, it's going to be this 128. But also, a lot of people will say, well, I'm selling firewood and I'm selling by the face cord. And, terminology can be very confusing, but a face cord is 4 by 8, but it's only 16 inches long. And so you're actually missing another 3 feet in a face cord. A face cord is simply 4 by 8, but it's only 16 feet or 16 inches long. And that's what a lot of people buy for wood stoves that are into the business of keeping a house warm. 16 inches long. I only use 12 inches. I have used my truck a number of times and I've measured it, and approximately a half a cord comes in a pickup load. So, if somebody has a pickup load and a pickup truck and they come to your house and they want to sell you the wood, have a recognition that it's about a half a cord. I'm talking about storing it, which we need to do for, like I said, anywhere from a year to or anywhere from 6 months to a year. What you want to do is you want to maintain a cover on the top. That cover should be slanted in some way, shape, or form. You want to keep the water moving. You want to keep the water from moving through the wood. And so you want to simply drop it off. Now, you do not want to wrap the stack in any way, shape, or form. There's actually a neighbor of mine that bought some wood several years ago, and he has completely wrapped it up with tarps. And I think what he's going to do is when he opens that up, he doesn't burn as much wood as what he thinks he does. But when he opens it up, I think he's going to have nothing but mushrooms growing inside that thing. It keeps it too damp. Only cover the top and let the air flow through. Tin versus a tarp. I don't like to use tin because I'm the only one usually that is moving these things around. And tin is extremely flexible and it's extremely cuttable, which means it's hard to handle for me. I find it to be very hard to handle. And so I use tarps, and I think there's a picture down on the left-hand corner and another picture coming up immediately. But I use tarps and move it around that way to keep the top dry. Where do I keep it related to the house? Where do I store my wood for the entire year related to the house? Literally, I was standing at this wood pile and I turned around, and that's how far away the house is from my wood. Several reasons. One is this is how I get my exercise in the winter. I have a large wheelbarrow and I go down every other day or so and bring a wheelbarrow full up. This is how I get my exercise in the winter. It's one way. The other way is I'm continuously splitting wood. The other reason that you want to keep the stack of wood that far away from the house is because of this. You want to keep termites away from your house. They love dry wood, and your house is full of it. This is another reason. Stacked wood that has a cover on it creates a wonderful haven for mice. And also, when you have mice, you're going to have snakes. When I get down there and start manipulating my firewood, whether I'm putting it into the wheelbarrow or I'm restacking or whatever it might be, I'm constantly looking for snakes. Whenever in fact, actually, people probably think I'm crazy because I'm down there singing, but I'm down there singing simply to get rid of snakes and the mice to move out. So be careful of that. Also, stink bugs are going to come in with your firewood. Ladybugs are going to come in with your firewood. Cockroaches are going to come in with your firewood. For some reason, I only find cockroaches at the bottom of the stack of my firewood. But that's usually where they are, and they are attached to your wood, so I make sure that doesn't come in. And also, you'll have hives of ants coming in or living in there. So be careful of all of that. So what should I be doing right now? Well, like I said, you need to start acquiring wood for next year, whether you're going to cut it down or what I do is I tell all the people that live around me who have trees, I'm looking for firewood. And it's surprising how many people know the story of Doug and the need for firewood. And I'll get phone calls throughout the year of people saying, I have a tree down in my yard. Do you want it? I first of all will go and look at it and make sure it's the right species, and also what kind of job is it going to take to get the wood from there to me. Also, if I stack on pallets, so those pallets do rot out eventually. I can usually get 2 years out of a good pallet. So pallets will be given away by anybody. Just simply go to the back end of all of these warehouses and you'll see pallets back there. Ask them first. This stack that you see right here, I think is going to be returned to the original user, but a lot of pallets you'll see by dumpsters ready to be thrown out. Remember also, the first wood that you put onto your stack should be the first one coming out the burn. So you want to rotate your stock. So whatever you stack first, you want to bring it out first. The price of firewood, I saw the sign just yesterday. Notice that it's only 0.65 cubic feet. 0.65 cubic feet. Remember, it takes 128 cubic feet to make a cord. So it would take 196 bags of this wood to make a cord. And it's also a dry kiln, which means it will burn quickly. At 196 bags at $9 a bag, it's going to cost you $2,000, close to $2,000 to have a nice warm fire all winter. At least for me, it would. And also, it's kiln dry, so it's probably going to take a lot more. So be careful. Talking about price of wood, usually a pickup truck load will be about $100. The closer you get to a city, the price is going to go up, 120, 150 and such. But $100 is a price range you can start with. So that's all you need to know. All you need to know is simply buy yourself a chainsaw, go out there, buy yourself a wood stove, start splitting, and have a warm winter. So with that, I'm going to call it a day, and I think I'll stop sharing here.
That was awesome. Thank you.
Good.
Thank you. Now we know why we need to do it now. The only problem is it's so hot right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
burn
And
up
I
a
see a couple questions there.
There are some.
Sassafras. Yeah, sassafras it's in the middle. It's not one of the best woods because it's not as dense. It's not heavy wood. Bradford pear, I'll burn every Bradford pear.
Burn 'em up.
You burned mine.
Yeah. Renee was nice and called me one day, and she had some nice Bradford pear, but it's a pretty dense wood, and so for that reason, Bradford pear is not a problem. In fact, go and talk to your neighbors about how invasive it is, and tell them, you will be happy to remove their Bradford pears. The the big pieces of wood, but they're responsible for getting rid of the tops.
Yeah. Oh no, Doug. Always appreciate having you on, and some really good tips for everyone. And love the great pictures too. You guys did a good job. Yeah, creative wood stackers out there.
Yeah. Oh, if you
Interesting, but
if you go to the web and look up firewood and wood stacks, it's amazing how these people have spent a number of hours artistically creating wood stacks. I don't have that time.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. It's like artwork, really. It's really cool.
Exactly.
then you wouldn't want to use it later, you know?
I know.
Oh man, it's too big. Oh, great stuff, Doug. Always love having you on. Really appreciate all you do for.
Nice to have been here.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Nice to have been here.
Yeah.
We have Anna. Anna, if you want to turn your camera on, you can tell me. I don't understand how you're gonna put a sticker on a butterfly.
Oh, I have all the details.
Oh, I'm so excited.
I'm like, how do you even get them?
And I'm ready to tell.
Okay.
Go for it.
Oh, let's hear it. Come on, Anna. Glad to have you.
All right. So yeah, today we're talking about monarch butterflies, and we are talking about putting stickers on butterflies. So we switch gears a little bit from firewood, but this is another very seasonally relevant thing as well. So, definitely something else that you should be thinking of this time of year, as well as getting your firewood prepped for the winter. So like Billy and Renee said when we started, my name is Anna Wiker, and I'm the outreach coordinator for the Kentucky Master Naturalist Program. I will put my email in the chat before we leave today. So if you're interested in learning more about the Kentucky Master Naturalist Program, I would be happy to provide that information for you. But on to the monarchs. So why are we talking about these guys at all, much less right now as the summer is winding down? Well, first of all, monarch butterflies are a critter that everybody kind of knows about and recognizes within their range, right? These are big, bold, and colorful butterflies, and they're often considered a flagship species for the habitats that they occupy. So a flagship species is like, if you think of like polar bears within their habitat, it's a big, charismatic, like appealing species that can kind of be, an indicator of the health of a habitat, and a particularly appealing species for, to kind of use as an icon for preserving that habitat. They're also an indicator species. So if monarch butterflies are doing badly, then it is potentially a sign and a warning that the world that we all share with them is not maybe as healthy as what we would want in particular ways. There's a lot of like human cultural importance that's put on monarch butterflies across their entire range throughout the United States and Mexico. And they also have this really interesting and dramatic ecology that is not really like any other butterfly in our area, that just sort of seems to have really intrigued us and, caught our imagination. So there's a lot of reasons why these are very well-known butterflies. And we are going to explore the life cycle of these butterflies, but also, unfortunately, the conservation history of them and threats that they're facing, and, some things that you can do to help. There's a lot to go into with these guys. So we're going to dive right in. Really quickly, the life cycle of a monarch butterfly, because it is really relevant to their conservation and, what's kind of going on with them as a species. They do begin life as an egg, as you would imagine, like butterflies do. And that egg hatches in 3 to 5 days. It's a single egg, and it's just this little itty bitty egg that's just laid by itself. It hatches out and it remains a caterpillar for 9 to 14 days. And monarch butterflies, you may know, exclusively feed on milkweed genus plants, and they do not eat anything else, and so they require milkweed to survive in their caterpillar form. They turn into a chrysalis, and then the chrysalis will hatch after 8 to 15 days. It just kind of depends on the time of year, the temperature, drought conditions, light availability, just a bunch of different things. There's a pretty wide range of how long it will take them to fully develop into a butterfly inside the chrysalis. But they will eventually, ideally, get to that point. And then they will emerge from the chrysalis as an adult monarch butterfly. And these guys, one of the things I should say, there's so many things that make them interesting, but one of the things that make them interesting is their dependence on milkweed. Many butterflies have host plants, right? Like the caterpillars need a particular plant to survive, but they generally have a little bit of flexibility in that. So there's a few different species, or, you know, like multiple plants that they could potentially feed on to survive. And so there's a little bit of flexibility there. Monarchs are inflexible. They need a milkweed plant for the caterpillar to eat. And that is kind of kind of what you got there. And so if you are interested in monarch conservation and you read up about it and hear about it, a lot of the times it's very, very tightly tied to restoring habitats and planting milkweed, because you can't have monarchs without milkweed. So monarch migration, this comes in once they've reached the adult stage in their life. And this is where, a lot of the conservation issues and the citizen science and eventually the monarch tagging come in. So there's multiple populations of monarch butterflies in the United States. There's a Western population and an Eastern population. And the Eastern population is much larger. It's the majority of the monarch butterflies, and it's much more migratory. So all of the butterflies in the Eastern United States, so if you're driving along and you see a monarch butterfly flying past your car, if there's one in your, out back in your garden, if you've raised some, little monarch babies out on your porch or with your kids in school or something like that, every last one of those butterflies is going to eventually leave and go down to a very small area in central Mexico to spend the winter, which has always been kind of wild to me that there's many migratory species of critters out there, right? But every single monarch butterfly is going to leave, peace out, and go to this one very small, very particular wintering range in central Mexico. And that is what they are actually pretty much on their way to right now. You may be seeing more monarch butterflies right now. You may be seeing more movement from them. And that is because they are gearing up for this migration. So our butterflies will all fly down to Mexico. They will spend the winter there. And then in the spring, first thing in the spring, they will fly north, but they will only make it as far as like northern Mexico and like far southern Texas, the southern US. And those monarch butterflies will lay eggs and then they will die. Then the next generation moves a little further north, lays eggs and dies. And then the final generation of the summer, like up here, in Kentucky, Ohio, and even as far as like the little sliver of southernmost Canada, that the final generation that is born will be that super generation, they call it, that will eventually migrate back to Mexico in the fall. So they kind of have this like step, like stepping northward pattern of successive generations throughout the summer. You can see here, there's a different pattern going on in the Western United States, but there in the Eastern United States, you'll have these successive generations moving northward until at the furthest northern point of their range, you'll have the super generation born, the last generation of the summer, that will then migrate back to Mexico. And the super generation it's about 20% or so larger, and it is also much longer lived. So they're going to live total about 9 months, since they have to migrate, live over the winter, and then survive to lay eggs in the southern US and northern Mexico the following spring. So they're called the super generation because they're larger and longer lived than their parents and grandparents. So this is just what it looks like in the fall. You can see they're all just funneling down from that northernmost part of their range to the overwintering grounds in central Mexico. And it's really quite a journey for a little bug to make, right? Super or not, that's quite a journey for a little butterfly. So because the overwhelming majority of the monarch butterfly population does spend the winter together, this provides this incredible opportunity that we don't have with a lot of species to estimate the population very accurately. So the way that this is done is they can just go in and you can see all these monarch butterflies are like clumped together, right? They're just covering the trees. This picture is from the overwintering grounds in Mexico, and it's very, very dense coverage. And so they'll just go in and they'll basically measure the number of hectares covered by these huge thick blankets of overwintering monarchs, and that gives them a really accurate idea of the size of the population because basically every monarch butterfly is there. So which is a really interesting, opportunity that you don't get with a lot of endangered or threatened or rare species. So what is the gloom and doom of it all, right? Unfortunately, we've got to get into monarch butterfly conservation and the issues that they face as a species. This is complicated. There are a lot of things that are factoring into the decline of the monarch butterfly. But if you didn't know, these are a species that are dramatically in dramatic decline. This graph shows the population from the winter of 1993 to the winter of 2024 to 2025, so last winter, and it shows the total population like coverage in hectares. So last winter, only 1.79 hectares on the overwintering grounds were covered, which is about 4.2 acres. So if you think of every monarch butterfly that you see in the eastern United States fitting into only 4 acres, that's not very many butterflies. And last year we've actually almost doubled the overwintering population from last year. Last year, it was incredibly low. It was less than 1 hectare. So not great, not, not what we would hope to see. Scientists think that we need about 6, like an average of 6 hectares across, time of monarch butterflies overwintering in order to keep the population going. So if we continue to see these really low numbers, it does not bode well for this species continuing, unfortunately. So kind of a bummer, but we're going to get into what you can do to help. So if you're feeling bummed, stay tuned because we can help. We can help fix this. So threats to the population, there are issues on the overwintering grounds. Obviously, they're really vulnerable because all the monarch butterflies that exist, basically more or less in the eastern population, are there, right? So if something happens to them, it's happening to the majority of them at one time. But what we are more easily able to control for the majority of us, and certainly for us here in Kentucky, are issues in the summer range. So that can be lack of appropriate host plants, obviously the milkweed, pesticide exposure, lack of nectaring plants. So those are plants that the adults are going to feed on. And then during migration, there's been recent research suggesting that a lot of the problem, or at least like a significant problem, is that adult monarch butterflies migrating from the northern part of their range to Mexico in the fall are suffering because there is a lack of nectaring plants. So if you can imagine, I'm sure you all have had the experience where you're like running low on gas and you've been driving on the interstate for like 100 miles and every rest stop is closed and you can't pull off anywhere and there's no Love's gas stations to be found. That can be an issue if you're a monarch butterfly. If there's nowhere to stop and eat and rest that's safe, then that could cause high mortality in monarch butterflies that are migrating to the overwintering grounds. So planting plants and leaving them standing until after the monarch butterflies are gone or even past that is a really important thing to help those adults get the energy and, food that they need to make it to their overwintering grounds. So what can we do? Well, obviously, we talked about habitat and all of the lovely stuff that comes with that. there are so many resources out there if you're interested in improving monarch habitat. And I would highly recommend that you look up monarch way stations. I'm going to drop some helpful links in the chat before we call it a day. And I highly recommend that you check out the monarch way station instruction sheet that you can find online. It gives you great ideas about what plants to plant for nectaring adults. It gives you great information about growing milkweed. And there are, specific like parameters that they basically studied and written up to say like, hey, this is how much of this plant it takes to actually be useful to the butterflies. This is, how close you should plant them to each other. This is how close they should be to other types of infrastructure. Just a ton of great information out there for people who are interested in creating habitat for monarch butterflies, which is a huge component of, successfully conserving the species. So just a couple quick little pictures of what that can look like. You don't have to turn your whole property into something that will get you in trouble with your HOA to create good monarch butterfly habitat. It can look like a lot of different things, and you can get it officially recognized by Monarch Watch with the Monarch Way Station sign. You can see it there in that picture, and that makes it look all official like. Or you can just, throw some plants out there for your monarchs. There's everything from like little patches in your yard to, roadside median strips and things like that can be a great place for not only the milkweed host plant, but nectaring plants for adult monarch butterflies. Another thing that you can do to help is engage in monarch research. So monarch butterflies have got to be like and this is my anecdotal opinion, this is not like a fact, but they must be one of the most studied species of butterfly out there. There is a huge community science community of people engaging in monarch butterfly research. And these are folks that aren't necessarily quote unquote scientists. These are people who just have a passion for monarch butterfly conservation and are involved with all of these projects or one of these projects or none of these projects, or they've created their own project or any of a number of ways to engage with research. And so much of the information that we have about monarch butterfly populations and conservation is based on citizen science projects. This is such a success story in terms of how many people are just willing to engage with the species and, gather data about it. And that's how we know so much about it. There's a few up here on the screen. There's so many community science projects that you could become involved in, no matter who you are, no matter how much time you have, no matter how much training you have. There is something that you can do to help contribute to the data that we have on the monarch butterfly. And I'm going to put a link in the chat at the end here that will give you a list of all of these. That is a very helpful list that kind of divides it up by like how much training you need, what is the time commitment. There's just so many options, and it's a great excuse to get out there and, maybe take your kids out with you and engage with some science and some butterflies. And it's so helpful for, helping us get an understanding of the species population and what we can do to save it. So one of the oldest monarch research projects on that list is Monarch Watch. And they are the ones who run the Monarch Way Station program, like that sign that I showed you there at the little garden. And they also run the Monarch Tagging program. And this is where we get into putting stickers on butterflies. Okay, so bear with me. This is where it gets a little wild, but I promise you it's for science and it's going to be okay. So they run this program and they also compile all the data for it. And this is how it works. So anyone can participate in this. There's a lot of scientific research that can seem rather intimidating, and it can be intimidating from a regulatory standpoint because you might need, a license for it, or you might need a permit for it. It's like if you're banding birds, if anyone's ever done bird banding for research or heard of it before, there's quite a lot of permitting that takes place in order for that to be done legally. But there is no requirement for monarch butterflies. So anybody can order the kit from Monarch Watch, and it will be delivered in late summer. They stagger the delivery based on where you are in the country because they only want you to tag the butterflies that are actually going to migrate for the fall. Because if you tag a butterfly that's like not of the super generation, then it's basically just going to live and die in your yard. So there's no real point in tagging it. You're not really tracking its, its migration at that point. So they deliver it to you when your super generation of monarchs is getting ready to up and leave for the summer, right? So in Kentucky, that starts in late August. You're probably starting to see, heightened monarch activity now. And if you were to start tagging monarch butterflies now, odds are that many of them that you tag would be members of that super generation that is going to migrate. Or, probably here in the next couple weeks if you started tagging them. So you tag them using the kit, and we'll get into that a little bit too. And at the end of the season, so when you're done tagging monarchs, which usually like by October, they're all pretty much gone, with a few exceptions, then you submit all of the data you collected, and it goes to Monarch Watch, and they compile all the data. And then what they do is that they actually hire people to go to the overwintering grounds over the winter and look through monarch butterflies a lot of the times, um, dead ones on the forest floor, live ones that they're able to see, whatever it might be. And they gather the tag data. Each tag has a unique number, as you'll see here in a second, and they cross-check it against the database that all of the monarch taggers have submitted to Monarch Watch. And that gives them a lot of valuable information about migratory success, about mortality, about, ratio of male to female butterflies that successfully make it to the overwintering grounds. And then we also get really interesting data because not only do they record the butterflies that are found on the overwintering grounds that are tagged, but if you're in Kentucky and you see a monarch butterfly that's tagged in your yard here in like, say 3 weeks from now, you see a monarch butterfly with a sticker on it in your yard and you're like, that's crazy. And you take a picture, you can hop onto Monarch Watch and report that you've seen that tagged butterfly, and they can match it to the data that was submitted by the person that tagged it and be like, oh, that was tagged in Michigan and it made it to Kentucky, which is an interesting data point in and of itself. But also over time, that could tell you things like, hey, we're seeing a lot of butterflies make it to Kentucky, but not make it any further. We're not seeing any tags reported on the overwintering grounds from, ones that pass through Kentucky. What is going on that's stopping them from getting there successfully? So each data point in and of itself is interesting. Each monarch's individual story is interesting, but over time, it can give them this really interesting picture of, the success of these migratory monarchs, right? And, what issues that they might be facing on their journey. So when you order the data or the tagging kit from Monarch Watch, you get a data sheet, you get the actual tags, which are up there at the top of your screen, which are itty bitty. They're like maybe the size of your pinky nail. And you get lots of good information about using the kit and the correct way to attach the tags and that kind of thing. And they also have a lot of great informational videos and information, on their website about sexing the butterflies, holding the butterflies, catching them, attaching the tags, things that people might get a little anxious about. They have great videos on their website. Again, I'm going to drop all those links in the chat when we wrap up here. And I know it can be a little bit intimidating, but, hopefully if you check out those resources, it'll kind of give you some confidence in doing this, because I promise you that you can do it. I've had, I've done tagging programs and had, 5-year-olds be be able to, with a little help and a little confidence, get these tags on there correctly and get the butterflies on their way. So I know it can seem really weird and intimidating to do this, to be honest. I was very intimidated when I started doing it. But, hopefully if you're interested in this, you'll check out those resources and, feel comfortable and confident to do this yourself, because it's such an important program. So these little tags that you get, they're super sticky, extra sticky, and they have a unique number on it, and they have the contact information for Monarch Watch. So that unique number stays with the monarch butterfly. When you submit the data, you're going to submit information about like whether the butterfly was caught wild or whether you reared it from a caterpillar. You're going to submit information about whether it was a male or a female, and it's all going to be attached to that unique number. So if they find that butterfly, in Mexico or in Texas or Louisiana or wherever they might find it on its journeys, then, they're able to look it up from that information and see where it was originally tagged and, the gender and what have you. So these little tiny stickers, a lot of the time, they seem really little when when you're looking at the sheet of them, and then when you put them on the butterfly, that's when it starts getting intimidating. They are very small and they're very lightweight, so proportionate to the weight of the butterfly, it's about like you going on a hike with like a decent sized full water bottle. So the weight of the tags is not super significant to the monarch butterfly. It's not shown to cause an increase in mortality or any issues for the butterfly that they've found. And certainly the data that this study has helped us collect far outweighs any issues that might arise in the tagging process, which there aren't any that that they've found so far that I know of. So basically, what you do with these, and I'll give you the quick little cliff notes of this, and then hopefully, if it's something you're interested in, you'll be able to check out some of the videos on Monarch Watch, or maybe even be able to go to an in-person tagging event. But you'll catch these butterflies. I have a picture of it. Yeah. And you'll hold them. When you pick up the butterfly, you hold it pinching together the wings just above the monarch butterfly's body. And I don't know about you all, but I was always told growing up, if you touch a butterfly instantly, it's all the scales will fall off its wings, and its wings will fall off and it will melt, and you can't touch butterflies because terrible things will happen. But you have to remember with these monarch butterflies, they're big, they're bulky, they're sturdy, they're made to fly from, Kentucky to Mexico. Putting the little tag on them and holding them for that length of time, as long as you're careful about it, is really, kind of small potatoes compared to all the things that this monarch butterfly is going to encounter on its journey. So you just hold it real gently above the body there, pinching the wings together so it can't flap around and damage the wings. And then you just press the tag down, peel the tag off, press it down on the discal cell, it's called, which is this mitten-shaped cell on the butterfly's wing that, that when they studied it to check for impacts of this tag, that seemed to be kind of like the best place to put it, where it wasn't like throwing off the butterfly's weight as it was flying. So they just get pressed onto the discal cell of that wing. They stick there real good. And then you have a tagged monarch butterfly, and you just write down the number. You write down, some of the information that Monarch Watch asks for, and you release that butterfly, and it is on its way to Mexico. One thing that a lot of folks do ask about is, can you actually tell male and female monarch butterflies apart? And you can do it too. It is very easy once you get the hang of it. That is the question that I get most often, aside from like how to hold them, because I feel like both of those things are, kind of intimidating. But it is pretty easy to tell the male and the female apart once you get used to it. So the male just has these thinner veins with this larger black spot on the vein in the center of the hind wing. And then the female just has thicker veins with no spots. And I know seeing it here on a screen, you're like, oh, okay, well, that looks the same. But when you see it in real life, you do pick up on it really quickly. Some resources that I wanted to share, these are the ones I'm going to put in the chat. And then if you are on the monarch butterfly scene, or if you're, a naturey person that reads naturey things sometimes in the news, then you might have heard that the monarch butterfly is up for consideration for listing under the Endangered Species Act, which is the federal law that protects species of wildlife and plants that are endangered, or have some type of issue going on with their population. So it's up for consideration right now. It's not currently listed under the Endangered Species Act. The comment period for it closed, I believe, in May. So that is in limbo right now, if that's something you were wondering about. And there is that link there at the bottom that I'll put in the chat if you want to read more about what is going on with monarch butterflies being listed as an endangered species. All right, so I am right up on my time. So I will go ahead and stop talking your ear off. And if anyone has any questions, I would be happy to answer them or, hang out and
we did have a couple questions in the chat pod. Someone wanted to know if individual monarchs are territorial when feeding. They observed a monarch and a black swallow feeding in a large flower patch. And after a little bit, they were kind of fluttering back and forth around each other and wanting to know if they were fighting over territories or basically just saying hi.
Oh, that's such a good question. I don't know if I would say territorial in the like I don't know, typical sense of the word, but I would say, if they are scrapping over resources, I would say maybe more so. Like that monarch butterfly might not be like permanently defending that flower as its territory, but it might be like chilling out, eating there, and then it sees the black swallowtail come along and it's like, excuse me.
I was
This
here
is
first. Yeah.
I
Like
beg your
someone took
pardon.
something off your plate, basically.
Yeah, like it's there. It's kind of like you're, enjoying your own little booth seat, and then like someone comes along that you don't know, and it's like, can I sit there with you? Oh, did you order appetizers for both of us? So maybe it's more so like that, I would say,
Yeah.
versus like what you would normally think of like a bird defending its territory or something like that.
Someone else asked, where's a good place to purchase milkweed seeds?
Oh, so I will also drop in the chat, as well as those links that I mentioned.
Okay.
The Kentucky Native Plant Society has a really good list of native nurseries that you can order from. Some of them you can order from, some of them you do have to go in person. And many of them have milkweed plugs or seeds available. And I would say any of a number of folks from this list would be good. I will say, I find milkweed difficult to grow from seeds, to be honest. I love gardening, but I don't have like the best green thumb. So maybe if you are like a more, a greener thumb than myself, then it might be worth it to grow milkweed from seeds. But a lot of these nurseries also have plugs available and larger plants and that kind of thing if that's more your speed. So I went ahead and dropped that in the chat, and you can check out that list. You can also, if you can find a spot where you don't have to worry about like access rights, like don't go tromping on your neighbor's property and do it. But you might be able to find a spot where you can find milkweed seed pods at the end of the season and harvest those yourself and have, some from our own genetic pool here in Kentucky. So that's definitely an option as well. But I would check out that Kentucky Native Plant Society listing and, see if some of the folks on there might be near you and might have some plants in stock or seeds in stock.
Thank you so very
Yeah.
much. This is such an awesome presentation. We really did appreciate it. And I really enjoyed seeing how you put a sticker on a butterfly, because that was just like, kind of mind-boggling.
It's kind of weird. It's a little weird, and it's very nerve-wracking. I was like, the first time I did it, I was shaking so bad I could barely do it.
Oh.
Because they're so little. They're just
I
little.
don't want to hurt
But
them.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly. Well, thank you for joining us today. We really appreciate it. I'm sure I'll have you back on for something else.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's always such a lovely time.
All right, Anna. Thank you so much. Keep up the great work. Thank you.
All right. Good show. I told you at the beginning it was some topics that were kind of like, and I
They came together beautifully, right?
Exactly.
I appreciate both of this.
Yes, definitely. If you want to rewatch our shows or any other show that we've had on in the past, you can go to fromthewoodstoday.com and we will show we have, I don't know, 250 shows or so on there. You can, like we said, you can binge watch us for days if you'd like, but we really appreciate you joining us because we wouldn't be doing this if it wasn't for you.
No doubt. Yeah. Glad to have you all with us and let us know what y'all would like to see on a future episode. And I'm sure that Renee can track somebody down for you. So
I'll find it. Yeah.
yeah, she's like a bulldog.
Until then, we'll see you all next week. Take care.
Take care, everybody. Bye bye.
From the woods today. From the woods today.